Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to offer my greetings and welcome to everyone this evening. So this afternoon, I was sitting outside, um, enjoying the nice fall weather. And you can see on the trees here in Canada, the leaves are all changing and changing colors and all dropping from the trees. The sun is sitting much lower in the sky, and you can really feel that it's autumn. And while I was sitting there, just got the real strong perception of impermanence, of change, the ending of one season, the beginning of another season. And what came into my mind as I was sitting there was this one of the verses from one of the chants we do. It's a teaching by the Buddha called the 10 things to be reflected on again and again by one who has gone forth. And the one that came to my mind was, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? And it's really interesting sometimes how it feels like some kind of Dhamma or Dhamma reflection arises in your mind, and how everything around us is teaching us if we're able to see it and we're able to understand the teachings. So, when many years ago, I was staying at a hermitage in Thailand in an area called Pak Chong. So, it was just a little hermitage in the back of a tamarind orchard. And there was this one layman in particular who worked at the orchard. He took care of the trees and took care of the plants, and he also would take care of whatever monk was living there at the time, living in the hermitage. And so, um, he was a really nice person, really nice guy, but he had had a hard life. um, Growing up in the country he had come from was very difficult, and he had had a lot of hardships. So he had a lot of trauma from the way, the circumstances of how he grew up. But he was a really nice person at heart. But one of the things was, every morning when you'd go on our morning alms round, to collect our food, he would come along to help out. Didn't really need him to come along to help out, but he really liked to help the monks. So he'd come along, and the alms round took about 45 minutes to an hour. And he spent the entire time, from the time you left from alms round right till you finished, just complaining. And he would complain about everything. He would complain about the other workers, he'd complain about his boss, he'd complain about his wife, just about everything. And not just uh kind of complaining. It was this real vitriol, like angry complaining. And so in the beginning, I would try to talk to him about it, give him advice on it, but he never listened to the advice. He wasn't interested in the advice. He was just interested in complaining and having someone to listen to. So, what would normally be a really difficult or awkward situation, could be really obnoxious, having this person, just complaining every day again and again about the same things, actually ended up becoming really beneficial for me. And I learned so much about myself from this layman. Um, so one of the things I learned about was learning about my own moods. So when I would go out there, I could really see how I would react certain days. Every day was the same. There was no change. But some days it'd be very easy to just be really spreading loving kindness to him. You could just get so much metta and so much compassion towards him when you're going on alms round. But then other days, uh, it was you couldn't really get as much compassion or loving kindness to him. You just try to keep your mind level and balanced. And then other days, you'd be really having to like grit your teeth not to say something, not to ask him to be quiet. And so you could really see how your mind was on those days. And one of the other things you could really see was you can learn about yourself. So I'd look at him and, he'd be angry, he'd be complaining, he'd be all this. And then I just reflect on myself, on my own behavior, and be like, okay, well, I can get grumpy sometimes too. And, I can complain too. Nowhere near the same level, but I can do these same things. So, this is the way I am. I maybe make other people feel like this, and really just learning from that and taking that situation and learning about myself, learning about the way I behave, learning about my mind, where my mind was. So when you have a situation like this, you can really learn from it. Or one of the things, especially for monks and forest monks, is we live in the forest, hence the name forest monks. But so one of the reasons, the main reason that people always think about is just for the seclusion. And of course, yeah, that's absolutely one of the biggest reasons, because you're away from all the dealings with other people, all the sounds, all these impingements, anything which can stir up the mind. One of the other reasons we go and live in the forest is because the forest is always teaching us. Um, when you're in the forest, you you don't have the same protections against nature. You experience heat, you experience cold, you experience animals, insects, mosquito bites, and one of the things you'd see a lot in the forest is you see a lot of death. You see a lot of animals dying. Animals are dying all the time in the forest, and you see it. There was one time when I was living out in Dowdam Monastery, which is this giant monastery deep, deep in the jungle on the border with Burma. And it was in the afternoon. And I had just bathed. I was just washing up my clothing and hanging it on a line. And a bear just walked up to me, and then it just dropped dead right in front of me. And so you see this death, you see all these things, and you can really reflect on it. You can really learn about it. You see that things aren't permanent. You can see that things aren't certain. You never know what's going to happen. It can rain, it can be hot. So we're always constantly learning, and always having all around us in nature, in our lives, is Dhamma. But it's easy to see that, to say that, sorry, but it's not always very easy to see that. One of the similes you get is, there's a starving dog, and he's lying on top of a pile of uncooked rice, of just like rice and it's still in its husks. And so even though he's so close to the rice, so close to something that would alleviate his hunger, he doesn't realize it. And even if he did, he doesn't know how to use that. So that's the same with us. Even though we have all these things around us day in, day out, which are teaching us about Dhamma, teaching us about impermanence, teaching us about dukkha or suffering. We have to be able to learn from them and be able to know how to learn from them. So sometimes when you're reading in the suttas and you read these stories about these different monks, like for example in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the sutta in the first discourse the Buddha gave, and there's a monk Anya Kondanya, and he just hears this one teaching of the Buddha, and he becomes enlightened, becomes a Sotapanna, and just thinking, oh, that's great. Hopefully that happens to me. Hopefully someone it's going to give me that perfect teaching, which just all of a sudden I become enlightened. But one of the things is that um, for him to be able to become enlightened like that, for him to be able to just understand it like that and see the truth like that, he's actually done a lot of practice building up to that. So he has meditated a lot. He has very good samadhi or concentration, and he's really developed his wisdom, and his wisdom faculties are really sharp. He just needed that one little extra thing, extra teaching about how to use that wisdom, and he was able to break through and attain sotapanna. So it's like this with us. If we want to be able to learn and to see um, Dhamma and to learn and have everything around us teaching us Dhamma, we have to work on actively, especially in the beginning, actively looking, actively bringing up Dhamma in our minds, bringing up reflections in our minds. So um, when I was a novice about to ordain, I went to go visit a very senior disciple of Lumpur Cha. His name was Lumpur Mahamon. And this was some of the advice he had given me for becoming a monk. He's like, yeah, you've got to listen to Dhamma. You've got to chant the Dhamma. You've got to read Dhamma. So basically, you want Dhamma always going in your mind. And for different people, it's going to be different amounts. Doesn't mean we have to be studying Dhamma all day, read 105 suttas a day, or be listening to Dhamma all the time. But for us, just whatever we find really works for us so that we can keep our mind on track and on focus. I remember once I went to, one of the times I went to go pay respects to Lumpur Suchat, and he's a very famous monk in Thailand. He's a disciple of Lungta Mahabua, and Lungta Mahabua had this super strict, like elite forest monastery. And while Lumpur Suchat was staying there, he would read suttas for an hour every day. And he was telling us that the reason he did that was to keep his mind on track, to keep kind of like keep his mind in the game. And so for us, we need to do this. We need to keep bringing Dhamma up in our minds and then actively try to bring up reflections. And then the more we do it, the more automatic it's going to be. And the more we practice, the more Dhamma in our minds, in our hearts, and the more it's going to come up. And we're going to be able to start taking these situations around us and use them as opportunities to learn and use them as opportunities to grow. But again, it's one which is going to um, take some time, take some practice. So when I was a junior monk at Wat Pananachat, one of the activities we do there is every afternoon we sweep. Uh, well, most forest monasteries in Thailand, most monasteries, period, in Thailand, there's afternoon sweeping. And so you're sweeping up the leaves from the forest floor. And we had this senior Western monk, Ajahn Kaliano, who was coming to visit. And he was telling us, yeah, when you're doing these chores, when you're sweeping, make this into a practice. So he's like, as you're sweeping, just being mindful of the sweeping, of the motion of sweeping. And you can use that as a samadhi object, as an object for concentration, for building your mindfulness. But he said, but then also you can start reflecting. These leaves you're sweeping, you can reflect on them. These leaves, they're made of the same elements that my body's made of. Um, and these leaves, they've died, and they've dropped down to the forest floor. And eventually my body's going to die just like these leaves. So we start bringing it up like this and bringing up these reflections like this, and then it will become more automatic. And so, when we can get to that point where we're starting to see more and more uh, situations in life as opportunities to practice Dhamma, um, every situation is going to then be an opportunity for us to grow and to strengthen our practice. But again, it's very easy said than done. So, if you're you're in a meeting at work, and or you're having some kind of conflict with someone on the street, and you're right in there in the mix of it. It's sometimes hard to bring up that Dhamma. Once it's all done, then you bring it up and you're like, oh man, I lost it again. That could have been an opportunity for me to practice some patience, or me to practice some letting go, or some loving kindness. But if we just recognize it afterwards, that's still a good start. We can recognize it afterwards, and then as our mindfulness builds, and as we keep practicing like that, we can catch it during the incident, or we can catch it before the incident, and hopefully not fall into the trap, and be able to see it as Dhamma, and see it as an opportunity to grow. So I would like to offer this as a reflection for everyone this evening.